All right, 2018 was a hell of a year for movies, dude. Like narrowing this list down to 10 was very hard. And even now I'm looking at it, I'm like, I could have this one a little bit higher. I don't know what I'd move down. Why don't we start with 10? We'll alternate, and then we can talk a little bit about maybe movies that were left off our list for one reason or another. You want to start?
Yes. I agree. It was tough to make this list. I've seen 94 movies this year. And I also have
Putting
a
in
lot more
work.
on my list still. Haven't seen Beale Street yet, unfortunately. We'll talk about that next week.
Mm-hmm.
So I do reserve the right to add Beale Street to this list if I deem necessary. I also haven't seen Cold War or Destroyer or Stan Ollie yet. They're just not playing by me.
Mm-hmm.
And I also want to see Shoplifters and Capernaum. And I also want to see The Rider, which I missed earlier this year, and Support the Girls as well. So plenty
Yeah.
of things I still got to watch, but I think I saw enough to have an informed opinion. So number 10 for me is A Star Is Born. Is that on
Ah,
your list?
yeah, I had that number two.
Yeah, it's funny. I had it very high when I first watched it, and then I was just kind of trying to piece together the list more.
Mm-hmm.
And I started pegging it down just because I think the movie slows a bit after the first hour or so, right? The first hour is so amazing
Yeah.
and so thrilling and like edge of your seat, right? And then I
Mm-hmm.
think it changes. I still really like the movie and I really endorse it. And I honestly think it probably should win Best Picture. You know, it's
Mm-hmm.
that or Roma. I think Roma's a better film, but I think Star is Born probably means more to win for the state
Right.
of Hollywood these days.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I have it at 10. You know, I really liked most things about it, but I just think because the movie ultimately is a conventional, uh, mainstream music movie,
Mm-hmm.
I pegged it down for that. You know, I have other stuff on. Like I mentioned, The Favorite is already on my list. I put The Favorite just ahead of this because I gave points for being different and unconventional. But A Star Is Born is frankly just an undeniable movie, so I
Yeah.
had to keep it on here.
Yeah, that was the reason I put it up so high. What I gave a lot of credence to in my list was how did I feel during the movie, after leaving the movie, and A Star Is Born is probably other than my number one, which I didn't see in the theaters. This is my number one movie I saw in the theater. It's the best movie going experience I had of the year. It was enthralling. It was tear jerking. I do agree that the second, it's basically two different movies. The first hour is this like thrilling, like rise to fame, and the second hour is this real relationship, like deep dive into this person who is very broken and how he deals with seeing his partner skyrocket and move in a different direction than him. And I think both those hours are effective in different ways, and I don't really knock it for being a little bit slower in the second half. I know a lot of people do, and I've heard some people be like, "I just wanted Jackson Maine just to die already." It's like, damn, like 2018's really made some people cold hearted, man. Um, but yeah, I think overall this movie is just it's so enjoyable, and I agree. I think it probably should win Best Picture, but uh, if you haven't seen it or if you haven't watched it again, please go do that.
How can you not
Yeah,
see
I don't know who has it. It's still in theaters, I think. Like
Yeah, it'll have been in theaters for like 3 months as of this weekend. So
crazy,
it
crazy.
basically caught up to Venom domestically, and Venom opened the same exact weekend and made like over 40 million more dollars, but it narrowed the gap just by
Yeah.
having really good returns and didn't drop as much. So quite the and they'll probably push it back up too right before the
Mhm.
Oscars. So yeah, definitely. It was funny because that was a movie when we first saw the trailer. Everyone's like, "This could be really great, or this could be really bad." It's not really bad.
No, it's definitely not bad. Something that also had probably one of the best trailers I can remember, and Jordan Peele recently dropped the Us trailer, which I've watched like 7 or 8 times just because I just love the way that they use the music in that with all the different scenes. Just really well done trailer. But the Black Panther trailer was probably the best trailer I had seen up to the Us trailer. And Black Panther's my number 10 movie of the year. This kind of similar to A Star Is Born was a cultural event. And I actually rewatched it recently. I got a chance to just
Hmm.
put it on while I was doing some
Netflix
other
now.
work.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's still a really great movie and it holds up. I did find myself being a little bit like frustrated with how little women women's voices were really accepted in the beginning of it. I think I felt very frustrated by that, even though at the end that's kind of the point that like we need to listen to everybody and like become more collaborative. I thought the performances in this were great, and Michael B. Jordan especially jumps off the screen and probably is the best Marvel villain up to this point. I think
Definitely is.
some people would say Loki.
No, some
Thanos.
people say Thanos, which just annoys me because like I like Thanos, he's effective in Infinity War, but there's so much nuance and writing done to the benefit of Killmonger.
Yeah,
You just don't get that in any of the other Marvel movies. He's just different.
I gotta say Thanos. I actually got to rewatch Infinity War with Julianne recently, and Thanos he goes from like taking a long time to collect one Infinity Stone, and then within like 4 hours, he's like, "Oh, the gauntlet is complete, dog. Like I'm ready to kill you all." It's kind of crazy how fast that moves. But yeah, Black Panther, just a phenomenal movie. Where did it rank on your list?
It's not in my top 10. I have it like 15, 16 or
Mhm.
so. But I do have it ahead of Infinity War, Spider-Verse,
Mhm.
etc. I think it's I saw a lot of people recently saying they like Spider-Verse more, and I think the reason Black Panther's still better is because Black Panther has more, I think, more to it. There's more going on. It's like more of an achievement in film. And I think Spider-Verse, if Spider-Verse was as good as it was and not animated, I would give it more points. But I
Mhm.
think it gets away with things because it's an animated film, which is not bad. It's not an issue. But I think Black Panther sets a higher bar for itself and also meets that bar, in terms of what it says about race. Like I think this
Mhm.
movie treats race better than Green Book does, you know?
Oh, definitely.
Like Spider Verse doesn't really have that ambition. It's just a really fun time, you know.
Yeah.
So depends what you want.
Sure. I definitely agree with that. What would be your number 9 movie for the year?
My number 9 movie we just talked about is The Favorite by Yorgos Lanthimos. Check out our review. That's at the beginning of this podcast, or if you're watching the breakout. Absurdist, fun, unlike any other comedy of the year. Still has really cool directing despite not being written by Yorgos, and 3 dynamite performances. Fucking lovely movie.
Yeah, I had it at number 5 on my list. Go back and check out the review. Number 9 for me was Eighth Grade by Bo Burnham. We reviewed this earlier in the year. I don't want to belabor it too much, but what Bo Burnham was able to do with this film is basically recreate all the anxiety, awkwardness, and tension of being an eighth grader and wanting to be taken more seriously and wanting to be accepted and fit in while also not knowing who you are and not knowing how to do any of these things and being terrified of putting yourself out there. Yeah, Chris Ryan of The Ringer said that he thinks it's the best horror movie of 2018, and I think that's actually a great description of it because it really you are sitting with your stomach just in knots watching some of the things happen throughout the film. Really great performances, and I think this if you can sit through it and deal with the awkwardness, like that pool scene is something you're not going to forget. Like there are moments in this that really stand out, and just a phenomenal film and another surprise for me. I didn't expect to enjoy this more than as much as I did. So number 8, moving forward for you, because I know you
Number
didn't
8.
have eighth grade.
Yeah, I had 8th grade, like high 30s.
Mhm.
But again, I liked it. I thought it was good, but I just didn't connect with it as much. But I still agree with everything you said. Um, Number 8 is Widows, a movie we also reviewed pretty recently. Do you have that one?
That was that was the hardest one for me to leave off.
Right.
I had it going back in and out of my top 10, but I felt like I had to have Black Panther ahead of it. But Widows, yes, I had that at 11. Fantastic film.
Right. Right. Yeah, Widows. Again, we check out a review. We talked about it at length, but uh, Steve McQueen doing a genre film, following a 12 Years a Slave, winning Best
Mhm.
Director, and then having Widows be a heist movie that's not about the heist. The heist does not matter. It's about the characters and the
Mhm.
dynamics that they have when they're thrust into difficult situations, following the deaths of their husbands. And I think the movie is nailed down by Viola Davis' lead performance, but also everywhere else you look, it's really strong. Cynthia Erivo, really awesome in one
Mhm.
of her first big acting roles. Elizabeth Debicki, someone we've liked for a while, really great.
Yep.
Um, and then you see why Steve McQueen's such a talent when you have that scene where Colin Farrell gets in the car and goes from his stump speech by the projects, and he gets in a short car ride to his affluent mansion on the other side of Chicago, right? In like 10
Yeah.
minutes. And the way they frame that with the camera on the hood of the car facing the windshield from the outside is shot amazingly, but it's also a really effective way of communicating so much about the movie and the character Colin Farrell's playing.
Mhm.
Um, so I think the movie is one of the best action movies we've got, despite not really being an action movie, because it's about wealth inequality and gender roles and all of that, right? Like there's just so much ambition to it. And I think some people wish there was more of the heist itself, or that was maybe strung out more. Was an issue for me because I feel like I was just appreciating what the movie was focusing on instead. But I do understand if maybe people didn't think it moved enough for them. But as a character drama, I think it's dynamite.
Yeah, and it had one of the best twists of the year. I mean, I think I mentioned in a review, but people in my
Yeah.
theater were literally like falling out of their seat when Liam Neeson came back.
Right.
Yeah, fantastic film, and uh, it's probably the best heist film of the year, but it's definitely the best heist film of the year that centers around women. You know, we had
Right.
Ocean's 8 earlier in
It's
the
not
year,
Ocean's 8.
and it can't even compare to how good this was. Number 8 for me, we reviewed this earlier in the year as well. The Old Man and the Gun by David
Ooh,
Lowery.
nice.
It, this wasn't originally going to be. This was one of the ones I was thinking about moving out, but the more I thought about it, Robert Redford's just really wonderful, and he's just like having a great time. He's gets to be incredibly charming and charismatic. And I think what I really like most about this film, similar to Spider-Verse, is it's about this person and basically the human character and the human condition, and can people change? Can that thing that drives us to do what we love, can that ever really leave us? Can we sacrifice that for other things that we feel like are more important in our life? And the story is really wonderfully told. You have a couple of other good supporting performances by Sissy Spacek and
Yep.
uh,
Tom Waits.
Tom Waits and Casey Affleck in this
Right.
film, as well as isn't Danny Glover in this as well?
Danny Glover. Yeah, he is.
Yeah. So it's a really fun small film. I call it small just because the story is very small.
It also made like $10 million.
Yeah,
Unfortunately.
yeah. But I do hope Redford gets a Best Actor nomination for this film because I think he
Yeah.
would deserve it.
Best actor stacked. I'm not sure if he's going to get it, but definitely deserving. I agree. I like the movie a lot. I had it at 20. Yeah, just really enjoyable and definitely a touchstone of like the cinema of old. It just kind of moves
Mhm.
like a movie from the 70s or whatever. So lovely movie, and yeah, like you said, great send off for Redford if it is in fact his final performance.
Number 7, Dave.
Mine. So all right, so 7 is where I put my foot down, where I put my line in the sand, my stump pick, if you will. I feel like if you're making lists, you want it to be interesting, right? You want them to be like you got to give people a reason to read it, right? And
Sure.
it's like we all know the consensus best 15 films, best 10 films, right? Because the ones we talk about the most, we've talked about a few of them already. We'll talk about more of them. Just having a list of that, like basically just a list of everything the Oscars we're going to pick is good and is probably objectively correct, but it's not always as interesting.
Mhm.
So I picked a small movie that I've mentioned a few times. I want to put on this list because I just found it super affecting to me, and I thought about it a lot. And I just really, really liked it. And that movie is called Skate Kitchen. It's about
Ah,
a group
I
of
had a
female
feeling that was gonna be.
skateboarders in New York City, uh, fucking hanging out and going through the shit. And Rachel Vinberg, uh, in her like first performance, is the lead. She's great, so lovely. And Jaden Smith, who plays like a supporting character, was awesome. I really liked him. And this movie is shot um, in a really cool way, and I just really like the plot. I really connected with the characters. And I said this when we did our mid 90s review, but I think this is a better film than mid 90s because
Mhm.
it has just enough plot, but it's still very much a New York film. It feels like a New York movie, the way like Gemini feels like an LA movie, something we talked
Mhm.
about earlier in the year. So yeah, I picked Skate Kitchen. It's on Hulu right now. I really, really want people to see this movie because I think it's fucking lovely.
Yeah,
So
it's
yeah,
one of the ones I'm I'm hoping to get to sometime this week before I head back to work, just because it is on Hulu and you've talked about it so much. But I've also seen a lot of people mentioning this, Minding the Gap, mid '90s as like some of the best films of the year. So it's definitely a worthy and an interesting pick for your top 10. It's surprising, although you've mentioned it enough where I'm not like falling out of my seat with the take. Number 7 for me is If Beale Street Could Talk. We're going to be reviewing it next week, so I'm not going to step on it too much. But uh, Moonlight was such a it was such a personal story about this person, kind of going back to the themes I've been mentioning. A lot of the films is like finding themselves and finding how they can be true to themselves, and the walls and the defenses we build to protect ourselves. And Beale Street, in so many ways, is about this couple who's uh, finds a way, like finds peace between themselves, finds a way to let those guards down, and then has those things ripped away from them. And Barry Jenkins, along with I didn't write his name down. I believe it's Nicholas Perret or
Yes,
Pertetti or something like
the
that.
composer.
It's yes, the composer. Make this film feel so warm, and at the same time, like the Brian Tyree Henry 12-minute scene everybody's talking about. There's a moment in that where feels like a horror movie for a moment. Like the way that they're able to use lighting and color and costume design to create the feelings in this film, the way that Barry Jenkins lets his shots, his close-ups just sit on people. He's in no rush to to steal any moment away from you. It's a masterpiece of filmmaking. I don't know if this is better than Moonlight. I don't think it is, but Barry Jenkins, just as a filmmaker, is phenomenal and probably one of my favorites at this moment in a time when we have seemingly like 10 to 15 different masters of filmmaking right now. He's at the top for me.
Yeah, I'm
Well,
like I said, I'm reserving a spot for it. I was planning to see it for this, but I missed it unfortunately.
mhm.
We'll see it this week. We'll talk about it next week, like you said. Um, and yeah, I'm expecting to like it. Obviously, I love Moonlight as well. I know Regina King is supposed to be great. I really like Stefan James from
Mhm.
Homecoming. He's having a banner year. So yeah, very excited to talk about it next week.
Yeah, and Diego Luna, dude, like
Oh hell yeah.
he's infectious. Like he's on the screen for maybe like 5 minutes total, but every time you see him, you're like, oh yeah, Diego Luna, all about it. Number 6 for you, Dave.
Yeah, number 6 for me is Annihilation. Uh, the oldest movie the movie I saw most not
Longest.
most recently, whatever, long yeah, saw in February right after Black Panther. Uh,
Mhm.
loose adaptation of the Jeff Vandermeer novel, directed by Alex Garland, who did Ex Machina, one of my favorite movies ever. Uh, it's a sci-fi film that's really more about the psychology of its characters and their relationship with the world. Meanwhile, Natalie Portman also shoots a machine gun at a albino crocodile or alligator rather. Um, Sci-fi film that looks amazing. It sounds cool. The score is phenomenal. That
Mhm.
buzzing noise that everyone knows is the cool is probably my favorite like cue of the year.
Mhm.
Um, and yeah, at the end of the day, it's just a really ethereal film, And of course, the performances are wonderful. Portman, Jennifer Jason Leigh, Tessa Thompson. It's fucking lovely. Gina Rodriguez too. So
Mhm.
I think Annihilation is such a smart sci-fi film. It's so ambitious, and they just don't make movies like this anymore because it's more pedantic and more measured in terms of the story it's telling. But I think the end is really great, and I thought about the movie a lot. And I think we said in our review at the time, not sure we know exactly what everything meant or was supposed to, but it didn't matter because it still worked because I'm still thinking about it.
Yeah.
Um, and I'm really disappointed that Paramount dumped this movie. They sold it to the international distribution to Netflix, so you can watch it on Netflix if you're not in the U.S. So do that if you haven't seen it. But they just did not promote it over here, and sure enough, no one really saw it, which is very disappointing. But I hope it has a nice life on streaming because I think it's really, really good.
Yeah, it didn't make my list. It's number 17 for me right now. But you make a really strong case for it. I think about that scene where the bear, comes into the house that they're
Haunting.
staying at. Yeah, and it has the human voice coming out of it. It's just so many uh, awesome CGI and very creative pieces to it. A very worthy film, and Probably one that I'll actually revisit. I don't get to rewatch a ton of movies, even though I've mentioned two today. I did, and that's one I definitely want to. Number six for me is actually something that we reviewed just last week in Roma. Now, I know Roma is an achievement in film. The top of my list, I really just put the movies that I had the best time in the movie theater with.
Yep.
And Roma, I watched at home, so I know that it's kind of lost in that. I think we mentioned in the review, so I don't want to go over it too much, but just Roma isn't higher for me only because I think that it fell a little bit flat sometimes in terms of like there were parts I just felt like it kind of screeched to a halt, and then there were parts where it really picked up and there was a lot going on. And Karan is an impeccable filmmaker. His style, his framing, the little things he puts in there, like having the gravity type movie in the background at the theater, or the way that the camera moves with her across the beach, like all those moments are just so wonderful, and it's such a moving film. Like as saw on like the rewatchables Facebook group or something like that, someone's like, no one told me about that scene from Roma. And I kind of thought like, there was like 5 or 6 that came to mind. So I started reading through the comments, see what they were talking about. But that's just a testament to how this movie was so wonderfully made. And yeah, check it out. It's on Netflix, so you have no excuse not to. Where did it fall for you?
Roma's a number 2 for me. I agree with what you said. It's a beautiful film. Cuarón's going to win Best Director for it, rightfully so. It's such a every single shot, everything about the movie is so confident in what do you call it? A actionable decision. Like Cuarón put everything together with this, and we mentioned in the review he did his own cinematography, did a lot of other things he usually doesn't do when he makes his movies, but he was all over this, and it really shows. And I think the autobiographical nature of the movie kind of directs the way the plot moves or where it doesn't move. And again, check the review for more on that. But yeah, I just think the movie is just such a masterpiece that I couldn't really bring it down anymore. But I do agree, it's long and it does have slow moments, so it's not a movie that I'll probably watch in full for a long time again. Maybe I'll go back and watch moments from it, because there's a lot to like, little moments or shots that you could just take away and really think about. So yeah, a lovely film, and like you said, no excuse to not see this one.
What's number 5 for you?
Number 5 for me is, I'm pretty sure it's not on your list, is First Man.
No, it's not on my list.
Damien Chazelle, follow up to La La Land. We reviewed this as well, so we don't want to go over too much also recently. But I think the reason I have it so much, and the movie really stuck with me just because such a visceral portrayal of space travel and just space cinema in general. And I really like space and I really like sci-fi, so that's something I really engaged with. And it's not the most engaging movie. Ryan Gosling is giving, by design, a closeted performance. He's not as engaging or charismatic as he can normally be. Certainly not what he did in La La Land. Claire Foy is great, but she's a bit of a tough hang because she's not having a good time most of the movie, right? And Chazelle is intentionally very claustrophobic with his camera and the way he's shooting it. But man, I just could not get over the way it just portrays the liftoff scenes and once they're actually on the moon, stuff like that. So I really like it, but I understand why some people might not like it as much, because again, it's not Apollo 13. It's not the right stuff. It's not like that.
No, it's a well done film, and I think when we mentioned it, the way we closed out the conversation was, it's a film I appreciate, but I don't want to come back to. And that's still kind of how I feel. It would probably fall in the high 20s for me. I didn't do my list out that far. I only got to 17. Number 5 for me was The Favorite, so we already talked about it. What's number 4 for you?
Number 4 for me is Sorry to Bother You.
That one came in number 15 for me.
Nice. Yeah. Speaking of good times at the theater, this was definitely right at the top for me. And I also gave it a lot of points because Boots Riley, who went on a long ride to make this movie, really went for it. This movie is unlike anything else you'll see this year. And that gets a lot of points for me because it's also good and effective. I like when you take shots and they chances and they work, similar to The Favorite, right? And I mean, we've been Lakeith Stanfield fans, we've been Tessa Thompson's fans. They're great. That's nothing new to us. But the framing of the film and the way it gets absurd and
Mhm.
the comedy of it is just so great. And like the sound mix is good because of course the voice gags we know from the trailer. Like, so there's a lot that needed to go right for this movie to work. And I think it really nails it. And even when it gets even crazier towards the end, once you learn more about Armie Hammer's character, um, I still think the movie just is so confident that it nails it. And this is definitely a movie I want to revisit. I believe it's on Hulu right now, so easy to watch. But
Mhm.
yeah, the movie's hilarious and smart, and it's a great social commentary as well. There's a lot to like, and also looks really good, for a urban film, like a movie in the cities. So, uh,
Definitely.
yeah, I really want to stand for this one because I know it's a movie that people really liked at the time, but I feel like I kind of got lost in awards conversation more or less, and I would really root for a screenplay nomination, but it probably won't happen.
Yeah, I mean, that was just a wonderful movie going experience, and the ending. I was laughing as you started talking about it, like, and called it absurdist, just because the ending with the horsemen is just like so out there, but it really drives everything home. I think really well. Um, Number four for me was Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. We just talked about it, so please check out the review earlier. But just to like hammer home why it's up there for me, you use the word refreshing. I think that kind of encapsulates it perfectly. It's a superhero movie that we haven't really seen done in this way. One thing we didn't mention was as it introduced all the different Peter Parkers and different variations of Spider-Man, and Spider Girl, Spider Woman.
Mhm.
It just did this like quick recap, and that was it. And it's like, oh, every single Spider-Man movie we've seen, it's been an hour of, oh, who is Peter Parker? How did he get here?
Yeah,
Uncle Ben, blah blah blah. And now it's like, you already know this story. Like, we don't need to go into this. And that was just really great. They killed off Spider-Man in like the first like what 30-40 minutes. Like,
I
uh,
didn't mind.
yeah, it's just a lot of he got that Christmas album music to keep his family doing well. So just a lot to love about this movie. It's funny, it's moving, it's uh, really great animation. Please check it out. Number three, Dave. Where did you have it? Number three for your 2018 best movie.
Number three, another movie I know you don't have is First Reformed, by Paul
First
Schrader.
Reformed what was a movie. I want to let you go in on it. It's a movie I've thought about scenes a lot, but it's a movie I just didn't find to be super enjoyable when I watched it. Moments of it were, but the whole
Right.
thing overall.
Yeah, First Reform was the first movie I saw this year where I just like sat in the theater while I was done and was just like lost in my mind for a while.
Mm,
Also, my number one is like that too, so I'll restate that shortly. But I thought a lot about First Reform, and I just think Paul Schrader's choices with the screenplay were so calculated, and despite the fact that he really goes in ways places I didn't expect, especially at the end. I think he really nailed it with that stuff. And again, not saying I know what it all means, like annihilation, but I thought about it a lot, and I think it worked well, and it wasn't jarring to me, despite being
mhm,
unexpected. I think that's a key point. Um, Ethan Hawke, really great performance as Father Ernst Toller, and it's a simple conceit, man. The pastor or minister is having a crisis of faith, but it's also very contemporary because it's about environmentalism and climate change, stuff like that, right? And then watching him be consumed by this and go down the path he goes down in the film, and then his relationship with Amanda Seyfried's character, uh, I just really connected with, and I thought it worked. And the themes of morality and like the human condition are not things that are strange or unknown from Schrader films, obviously. But I don't know, I thought he really connected with it. It's funny, this movie actually set the con record for the highest jury score in terms of just like ratings, right? Which
mhm,
I think kind of speaks to just how like it kind of like knocks your socks off when you watch a movie for the first time because you're not really sure what you're getting into. And I do agree, it's not exactly the best hang, no doubt about that. Um, but this is a movie that I really enjoy. It's the only A24 movie on my list this year. It's currently on Prime. So again, I really want people to see this because even if it doesn't work for you, if you thought the metaphors were maybe too strong or too heavy-handed, that's fine. But I think it's absolutely worth a watch, just to formulate an opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned the choices Schrader makes with this, and I think how still his camera is up until the end is probably the piece of it that has stuck
Right.
with me the most. You know, that final shot is so memorable, and his choice to make that like the one where you're like swiveling around is just it's inspired for sure. And First Reformed is on a lot of people's like high on people's lists. It's a film that's lauded this year, and I'm sure we'll be talking about as we move into the awards season. Shout out Ethan Hawke, good for him. Number 3 for me, very different movie from First Reformed. Mission Impossible Fallout.
Hell
Dun
yeah.
dun 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 dun. Um, Outside of A Star Is Born, this is the most fun I had in a movie theater this season, and it was just like pure adrenaline. You know, what did I call it last week when we were talking about our trends? It was a cock loading or something like that. Fist cocking. That's what it
fist
was.
cocking, yeah.
Yeah,
Cavill.
Cavill loading his fists. The Halo jump. You know, even when they're like driving through Paris, and it's just so much fun to watch. This film was just it was a delight. There's really not much to really say that we didn't say in our review earlier in the year, so check it out. But yeah, I just get a smile thinking about it. It was just a lot of fun, and for as much as these films are kind of what they are at this point, to be this satisfying and come away with this much pleasure is just a testament to Tom Cruise and Christopher McQuarrie and just the whole crew. Shout out Vanessa Kirby, electric God. When she's on screen.
And that's the thing. It's like I had this top 20. Love the movie, the best action movie of the year, pure action movie, easily.
Yeah.
Again, because if you're stipulating with Widows being very different, obviously, best pure action movie, clearly Fallout. And you know, I didn't expect to also have this revelation of a new actor now I'm obsessed with, but that's what happened with Vanessa Kirby just coming out of nowhere. And again, not unknown, who's on The Crown, I know, but like for me, I was like, who the fuck is this person? She's a star, you know, she kills it. And Fallout is one of those movies I think, like Black Panther, is kind of a test case for when we're honoring film at the Oscars or however we're doing it. Achievement in filmmaking is done multiple ways, and I think the way they make this movie, in terms of the way they shoot all these complex
set
scenes,
pieces,
set pieces. Obviously, the cinematography is so impressive and challenging to do. So that's worth it. Also, like you said, it's so engaging and moves at such a brisk pace that's just so fucking fun. Again, not to be discounted, but also I think Tom Cruise, who again, think what you want of his personal life, but as an actor, he's just so committed to being an action guy now that I honestly think if we can reward Gary Oldman and Christian Bale for putting on weight and wearing prosthetics when they're portraying someone, I also feel like Tom Cruise doing 16-hour shifts with 2 different crews to learn how to fly a helicopter in 6 weeks is also a form of acting that should be commended.
Jumping out of literally like 5-story windows and breaking his ankle and shutting down production for like a month.
Doing hundreds of Halo jumps to practice it and figuring out how they get the camera to record that in such a way that it's actually appealing to watch. Like, there's so much about this movie that just blows my fucking mind.
He's a goddamn psychopath, man.
Yeah, and he'll probably die making one of these movies. That being said, cannot wait for Top Gun 2.
No, it's funny you were mentioning like the achievement in film. I think in a way our 2 lists kind of highlight what like the 2 different ways that you can look at a film and what you really want from a film. While you know I had the Romas and the Beale Streets on here and like the smaller movies, and I think you highlighted more artistic films that were more achievements in terms of style and the choices that they made. I was going like strictly for pleasure. Like, what did I come away with the most? Right. And I think that just speaks to how there's two very different types of moviegoers. So hammer your point home. We're on to number 2.
Number 2 for me is Roma. Again, Roma. Check out what I just said. Watch the review. What's your number 2?
I had A Star Is Born. So we're on to number 1.
All right. Number 1 for me is Burning. Burning is a South Korean film. It'll be nominated for Best Foreign Film. Great year for foreign films, by the way. I haven't seen them all, but Burning, Shoplifters, Cold War, Roma. Great year for that. But Burning, this movie when I was done watching this movie, this shit just blew my fucking mind, man. Like I immediately texted the one person I knew who had already seen it, and we just talked about this movie for 20 minutes. I was like, and no pun intended, the movie is a slow burn. It's over 2.5. It's like 2.5 hours, 2 hours 20 minutes, and it's very deliberate, very measured in how it tells the story, and it's based off of a Murakami short story, uh, and obviously expanded. But the lead actor is named Yu Ha In, South Korean, and then he's the protagonist, and you don't understand uh, everything you're watching in this movie uh, at first, and the way they this movie is shot and structured by the director Lee Chan-dong, you start to question what you think you know from the past hour you watched as you watch this movie. And it's done such an expert way that you can't help but just be in awe of how they pull it off. And then the breakout, the star of the film is Stephen Yeun, who we know as Glenn from The Walking Dead.
Mhm.
And I never thought I would have two Stephen Yeun movies on my list, but he was also good and Sorry to Bother You. And he's really killing it right now because he was in Okja last year, so I'm really happy
Mhm.
for him. But he comes into this movie after uh, the lead's character's friend comes back from abroad, and he just comes in. He's such an enigma, such a cipher. And the way you learn about his character in the movie, again, I don't want to really spoil anything because I know a lot of people haven't seen it. It's made less than $1 million in the U.S. Not, no one saw it, right?
Mhm.
And it's also in Korean subtitles, right? So it's you got to commit to this. But I saw it in the theater, and I'm so happy I did because the movie just wraps you in, and like I said, it just blew my mind by the end. I think the ending, once you understand what everything means, it's again, you just can't help but be in awe of what it does. So I really want to stand for this movie. I want everyone to see this because I think it's,
Mhm.
a lot of people are like, oh, foreign films. I already saw Rome. I don't need to watch another one of these. Fucking watch Burning. Burning is crazy.
Yeah, two foreign films on your list, but Burning is one that is very high up on my list of films I want to see. Unfortunately, I haven't gotten a chance to catch it yet. I'm hoping it comes to like a streaming service pretty soon, but I'm not sure if that's in the cards. Um, yeah, it's interesting to think about how Burning could win Best Foreign Film and Roma could potentially win Best Picture. Like it's a real
Right.
possibility. It'd be an interesting story to talk about after the fact. My number one, a documentary, Minding the Gap. I didn't catch it in theaters. I watched it on Hulu about a month and a half ago, and yeah, this film. I went into it thinking this is like another skateboard movie, and it kind of is, but really, it's this like social commentary on um, the socio-political, economical landscape of the late '90s, early 2000s, and how that impacted the people of those times, how it impacted the lower to middle class, and how that has then now created the systemic domestic violence. And Bing Liu, who's one of part of this skateboard crew that he started off just wanting to make montages and
Right.
found a really deep and moving story within all of this. Um, he tells the story not only of his own experience with domestic violence at the hands of his stepfather, and he even interviews his mother at one point and talks about like what that experience was like for her, and that's a pretty difficult moment to watch in the film. But his uh his friends Kiev and Zach, he really highlights how um they were affected by this, Kiev by his mother's uh patterns of jumping into these domestically violent relationships, and then Zach developing his own patterns of domestic violence. And um it there there's a stretch of this film, especially when Zach is having this like long, like inner monologue put onto the screen, and uh, it's just really gripping and moving. And I found myself like sitting there just with tears in my eyes as I found this film to be so much more than I originally anticipated. And it's one of the only films I found myself this year telling everybody to go see. And
Hmm.
especially now that it's on Hulu, it's very accessible. But I think just it's so meaningful. And if you want to go in thinking it's a skateboard movie and just come out, with a different pill that you swallowed, that's fine. But it's really an achievement, and it's the best movie going experience I had this year by far.
Yeah, crazy big year for documentaries, as we mentioned on our trends
Mhm.
episode last week. But I like documentaries. I've always liked documentaries. I like learning, but I've never really sought out like theatrical documentaries when they come out. You know, I always just focus on features, but this year really changed that for me. And I actually haven't seen Mind the Gap yet. I'm looking forward to it. Obviously, I know all the acclaim, but I also want to give
Mhm.
like Free Solo a watch. I want to watch
Mhm.
Won't You Be My Neighbor? You know, I don't usually feel that way about a lot of theatrical docs. So
Mhm.
crazy year for that.
Yeah, and just a great year for movies in general. We mentioned a couple that didn't make our list. Are there any that you want to shout out as honorable mentions or just in
Yeah,
general?
yeah, sure. Things we haven't talked about. My number 11 is Black Klansman. Um,
12 for me.
yeah, I had that really high for a lot of the right after I saw it, and still really like the film. Um, and it'll be in the awards convo, so a lot of people talk about that. Isle of Dogs, another movie that I had high when I first saw it.
Mm.
Just kind of slowly pegged down as I saw the stuff, but watched that review we did. I still love Wes Anderson. It's good Wes Anderson. Um, Death of Stalin. I mentioned that
Yep.
earlier in the year. Uh, Shit's fucking hilarious at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Um, Private Life. Just recently saw it. It's on Netflix.
Really good.
I encourage everyone to see that. You just watched it as well. I
Yeah.
think Private Life is very well done, and in terms of portraying midlife fertility issues with a couple,
Mhm.
it's really smart, and also has a lot of funny moments. I thought the movie was wonderful. Also, really like Thoroughbreds. I thought Thoroughbreds took some cool
Mm.
chances. I really liked Anya Taylor Joy and Olivia Cook in that. Let's see, and then lastly, I just want to also shout out Ballad of Buster Scruggs, mid '90s. You Were Never Really Here, which we read earlier in the year. Tully,
Mhm.
Beautiful Boy. I really like Chalamet's performance. Gemini, which I mentioned. And lastly, A Prayer Before Dawn, which is on Prime right now. That's a movie starring Joe Cole, who everyone probably recognizes from Peaky Blinders or Hang the DJ, the Black Mirror episode.
Mhm.
And that's about a uh, Englishman who gets put into prison in Bangkok and has to do Muay Thai fights to survive, basically. And
Damn.
it's a very tough watch, and it's really gripping. But watching that after you watch Creed 2, I think is a cool idea. They're cool, nice companion film. So check that movie out. Another movie that a lot of people didn't really see. I don't think A24 really pushed it much in the theaters, but it's already on Prime, so give that a watch. Also, lastly, I noticed that my top 10 list right now, every movie I saw is from a different distributor. Burning is CGV Arthouse, Roma's Netflix, First Reformers A24, Sorry to Bother You is Annapurna, First Man's Universal, Annihilation in the US is Paramount, Skate Kitchen is Magnolia, Widows is 20th Century Fox, Stars Born is Warner Brothers, and The Favorite is Fox Searchlight. So I don't know. I thought that was something that I totally didn't plan, but actually was weird. I saw have movies from everywhere on this. Again, if I put Beale Street on there, that's two Annapurnas, but cool observation I had.
There's a lot of great stories being told. I think I mentioned yesterday I saw close to 60 movies this year in and out of the theater. Um, and we mentioned most of the ones I wanted to get to. We talked about Vice. I still think that's a film worthy of being in the discussion. And Wildlife also. Shout out Carey Mulligan for a hell of a performance in that. And check out all the reviews on these. So you should subscribe to our YouTube channel, and also go to soundcloud.com/nostalgiapod and follow us everywhere you can listen to your pods.